Hello, and welcome to Replay Value. Psycho-Pass is a show deserving of analysis because of the world it creates, the ethical and moral implications of its systems, and the brilliance by which it builds and shows that depth. Today I want to tackle the last one of those, so I'm not getting into the philosophical elements here, because I want to show why Psycho-Pass's first episode creates a simultaneous disconnect between the Sybil system and the standard dystopia, while creating a connection for us to experience the plot through Akane's emotional and narrative arc. From the very beginning, we go on a tour of a hyper-modern city. With drones, large skyscrapers, massive billboards, we fly through listening to Abnormalize, which is a phenomenal insert track, eventually taking us up through the city to this tower. At this moment, we don't know whether this is a flashback or a flash forward, but it feels climactic. Kogami is injured and fighting a dude with a chainsaw, the firing moment is sick and in slow motion, and Makishima descends the staircase practically monologuing. It screams climax. And so it's almost shocking when after the title card drops, we completely change gears to Akane's first case. The physicality of this location in the pilot is what really brings the viewer into the world. Firstly, it could not be more different than the tower moment. Whereas the tower is high above the city, literally the tallest tower above the cityscape, this city block is pretty low to the ground. It doesn't have nearly as much verticality, only a few stories that were shown. Secondly, the tech levels are totally different. The tower has basically a hologram wall to it, placed against the backdrop of, again, a hyper-modern city. This block, we're told, is an abolitionist block, and doesn't have nearly the same kind of tech to it. It feels more out of Blade Runner, with the bright neon lights, the packed-together buildings, and the homelessness. It's a stark contrast that creates a dichotomy for the Sybil system's effect on society before we even really start asking those kind of questions. The Ghetto location is also brilliant because it matches Akane's discomfort with the situation. This is her first case, but she's gotten pulled into this area that is so dissimilar from the bits of the city that we've been shown earlier. It's dark, it's raining, it's dirty, and it's cramped. It feels like an actual dystopian city, where society is in the process of falling apart, as opposed to a place where they've rejected the technological revolution and that's why it is the way it is. And Akane is a bundle of nerves throughout the episode. It's her first time working with enforcers, her senior partner isn't helping her out in any meaningful way, and her reaction to the Dominator suggests that she's got very little experience, if any, with the device. She could not be more of a fish out of water if she tried, and it's apparent not only through her facial reactions, but also through the landscape that she's operating in as well. And speaking of the enforcers, their introduction is so well done. The paddy wagon rolling up screams danger with the red lights and the way it looks like a moving prison. Then it opens up and we get this shot from the inside, where the enforcers are mostly in shadow but get some hints of light, foreshadowing the latent criminal conundrum that Akane will acknowledge later in this very episode even. The way Psycho-Pass handles its exposition is really well done. We don't get any lines that don't make sense in context, and Masaoka's comments that everything she's learned in school is basically worthless in the field makes any explanations that are done seem pertinent. Also, with how nervous she is, these discussions seem to have the dual purpose of explaining things to the audience and to try and calm or to talk sense into her. Akane's interactions with Masaoka also raise this question of what is a latent criminal actually, given that the enforcers, especially Masaoka, seem normal, yet are treated like dogs by Ginoza and are supposed to be hunting someone who's a latent criminal now. If there is a difference, you can see it in the eyes of the characters. Like when Kaguri is about to shoot the target. The comparison between the two's eyes is like night and day, despite the fact that they're apparently the same, according to the Sybil system. The same is true for Akane and Ginoza, the wide-eyed first-timer versus the hardened veteran. And this focus on eyes is really interesting in that regard, because the Dominator is considered Sybil's eyes, and the Dominator's activation sequence overlays onto the iris of the wielder, becoming an extension of Sybil's eyes in an almost literal sense. Later this episode, we even get a double exposure of Akane's face and the Dominator. So when Kaguri shoots the target, it's set to paralyze her. But after the man falls out the window and descends further into the ghetto, it's almost a descent into further madness, also highlighted by the darker places he goes to as he runs. So when Kogami shoots the man with the lethal eliminator mode, it's already been visually prepared that he'd gone too far. The woman has a similar case, where she goes from a paralyzer target at the top of the stairs to descending into madness upon crashing down the stairs and finding herself in this dark basement, whereafter she's now a lethal elimination target. But she's able to come back to paralyzer range, raising the question of why she was able to be saved but not the man. Though as an audience, we're happier that she lives, because she didn't really do anything wrong and wouldn't have been punished under our legal system. She's shot by Ginoza, whose team is looking down on the whole mess. A literal metaphor for Ginoza's treatment of the enforcers he won't call by name and the new girl who he doesn't have time for. As the credits roll, we get this shot of Akane on the riverfront, looking back across to the technological marvel of the city, compared to the ghetto behind her, which gives a sense of building towards the city, and specifically the tower. The episode focused on this city block, which felt like it belonged in a dystopian society, one that's set low to the ground and makes Akane have this sense of total discomfort. So in a literal sense, there's a feeling of building towards the climactic scene at the top of the tower. We've started at the bottom and laid the groundwork from a narrative perspective on building up to whatever the overarching narrative is going to be, which at this point in the story seems to hinge on whatever is happening at the top of the tower. And that is why this setting, between the literal narrative foundation it lays and the feeling of fear and suspense that puts us in Akane's mindset, the way the directionality of the sequence plays out within the setting, all of this creates a pretty unbelievably perfect setting for a solid pilot for a pretty fantastic show. I kept this focus on episode 1 so that it can raise deeper questions about the show without answering them for those who haven't seen it but might now want to. If you want more episodes talking about Psycho Pass and connecting the stuff I talked about here to the later themes of the show, let me know with a comment, subscribe for more analysis if you're interested, and as always, thanks for watching.